Good evening. Thanks for coming out this evening. My name is Nelson Linder, and this is the Austin NAACP home office, and this is Simpson United Methodist Church. I want to thank you for, first of all, the sacrifice of being here. I know it's tough, but this is a very important occasion. We called this event today to respond to the YACO decision last Thursday regarding the case of Charles Kleinert and Larry Jackson Jr. This time last week we were anticipating that case, and so after it happened, a lot of us were very disappointed. Folks went into shock. It was a very tough and challenging weekend. But we promised folks we were going to organize and communicate and have a very appropriate, concise response. And so now we have that. Let me say this first, that we want to thank Rosemary Lindbergh for deciding to appeal this case. She obviously made the right decision, and I can tell you that they are very committed. They're going to have a lot of help nationally from the NAACP and other civil rights organizations, given the nature of this ruling and the nature of this case. So I want to thank her in this case for trying to do the right thing. That's important. Here's the second thing I want to say off the top. When you think about the YACO, and I'm going to call this full name, it's interesting, Earl Leroy YACO III. Interesting case, because in the ruling, he cited a case from 1890, Nagel versus Terry. And when you read that case, there's nothing in common with what happened to Larry Jackson. So you think about it, how do you go back to 1890 and make a case relevant in 2015? It was clearly a stretch of his imagination and also of the defense. Here's what we think. First of all, given Larry Jackson's plight that day, there's nothing in common with Nagel versus Terry, clearly. So the question is, why did he do this? We think the first clue is, if you remember early on, he changed the venue from a state to a federal court, meaning he basically cheated the entire Travis County grand jury system out of hearing his case, and also the taxpayers. So he changed the venue, giving the defense an enormous assist. Then he decides, well, because of federal immunity, they call it the immunity clause. I'll call it the white supremacy clause, by the way. I think that's important for a lot of reasons. And that's why we call today's event Dred Scott, because in Dred Scott, there was also a case about federal jurisdiction. But if you recall, a black man has no right, the white man can respect. When you examine these issues of police, and they're all over the place in Austin, Texas, the United States in general, you see time and time again that black people have no rights. In almost every case, you got state, local, and the feds looking the other way. But this case, I think, is going to be an enormous opportunity to begin to examine state penal codes, the Constitution, to make sure when we fight these cases and we get indictments, that we can balance out in the courts. Because clearly, while we're fighting in the streets, we're not combing the brushes of the Constitution. We've been saying for years, until you hold the state penal codes accountable by revising them, and the federal codes accountable by amending them, it's going to be very difficult to hold these police officers accountable. But let me tell you this, talking to national folks all weekend, and these are good lawyers, by the way, who have a lot of experience in civil rights law. They think that YACO left a hold as wild as the Grand Canyon, and that this case will probably go all the way to the Supreme Court and maybe be even a case precedent. And here's the other thing, and we're grateful of this. You have all these federal task forces all over our community all the time doing investigations. We weren't looking them up. We didn't think about this. So this incident happened for a reason. So we're going to scrutinize these federal task forces. Who holds them accountable? What's their motive operandi? All those kind of things. And by the way, when it comes to cases like Kleinert and Larry Jackson Jr., there's a case called Tennessee versus Garner, which is a federal case, which defines proper use of force. But of course, YACO didn't address that. He didn't have to, because according to him, this officer was a means for prosecution. We think that's a wrong decision. We think it's going to be exposed, and we support Lindbergh again in going to the Fifth Circuit, which you know is not our friend, but that's not really the point. The point is you go there to appeal this case, then you shoot for the Supreme Court. And I think right now, I've been getting phone calls all day, folks who are watching this case all around the country. The eyes are going to be on Austin, Texas. Meanwhile, to our public officials, city council, commissioners court, state representative, where are you? Why can't you make a comment on a case like this where a man was clearly killed unnecessarily, and you got a racist judge who uses this white privilege to make a decision to give the cops an assist they don't need, but you've said nothing. You've said nothing, which tells us that your inaction, City Council, your inaction, Commissioner's Court, is what creates this problem. And we're going to call on you in the coming days to get involved and address this case. And here's how you can do that. You can tell the community, number one, you're going to scrutinize these federal task forces. And if they operate in this city, in this county, we need to have a standard. And by the way, there are plenty of standards. Charles Kleinert violated response to resistance, which is ABD's policy. We think he violated every decent use of force policy in the country. So how does this guy walk out of a courtroom thinking he's free? It's ridiculous. And we're going to say again, folks, while we appreciate the fight in the street, until we reform and in some cases abolish these racist constitutional statutes, we're going to have this conversation time and time again. So today we're encouraging you, don't let last week defeat you. These decisions happen all the time. We're ready for it. We're going to go forward. And we think with our resources, with our understanding and our data, that we can still reverse this case. So be sure that we are not frustrated, we're not hopeless, and we're not helpless. So as we go forward, we want to encourage you folks to spend more time studying the Constitution. Spend more time reading the Texas Penal Code 9.51, where everything sounds like being objectively damn reasonable. None of this stuff is objective, and it certainly is not reasonable. But these statutes give cops an umbrella every time. So please join us in making sure you tell your local representatives, your Congress folks, and the DAs to begin to amend the Texas Penal Code. And until we amend that penal code, I can assure you we will not get a fair hearing in this racist court decision. In the final analysis, there's one final request. We've worked a lot of cases in this city. When I see the Jackson family and what they've been through, City of Austin, we urge you to put down the politics, put down the dislike for lawyers, and talk to the family directly and settle these remaining cases. Show some decency to their pain, to their hurt, and get these cases resolved from a civil standpoint. We don't want you to be legal about it, but admit that this guy Kleinert was wrong on every count. If you're going to be silent on these kind of issues, we can't solve these problems. And a final comment based on a comment by Kenneth Cassidy, who's the ABA president. He said, if you don't like this decision, change the law. Is that incredible?
It is.
Why not say, you know what? This is one example where our cop went too far. Is it too much to be decent? When you make these kind of comments, do these kind of decisions, that's why we're at war in the streets, because people see the arrogance and the fact that folks have no desire for justice. To our police chief, to his credit, he said on yesterday, no matter what your status, a task force, there should be an accountability. Give him credit. He's right. Should be a standard. No task force should have immunity. But it shows us we got to think on every level, folks. It can't just be emotions. These guys know the law. They hide behind the law. They've been doing it for a long time. Having said that, we're going to stop and take some questions about our comments today about this situation as we go forward. Questions?
What is the effect of this ruling on the African American community?
I think it reinforces what we already know, that first of all, when it comes to the criminal justice system in this country, it's biased, it's crooked, it's antiquated, it needs to be reformed, and some of it needs to be abolished. So this is our worst nightmare, but we know it already. You think that somehow people are going to change, but no. Until the law changes, history tells us they won't change. So for us, I mean, it's our worst nightmare coming true. We see this every day all over this country. This is one case. But we already expect this. The goal is now, how do we change it? We change it by taking away this, what I call this white supremacist umbrella that allows this behavior to continue. This is a racist act. We can't get around that. That's a double standard. So we have to address it in our laws by reforming them on every level. Once we do that, we might have a fair chance in the courtrooms. When folks go to jail for killing black people, I guarantee you, you're going to see a decrease. They need to be prosecuted. But you can't prosecute them while they hide behind things like antiquated cases like Negro versus Terry, which have nothing to do with, by the way, police brutality. This is a farce. That's what we're calling it. We need folks to pay attention and demand change on every level. And also, please call your state representatives and say, why aren't you here? Why don't you have an opinion on Nagel's opinion? We need more politicians involved who have decency and courage when it comes to these kind of issues.